In this video I'm going to get it close. I'm going to get real close with this 60mm macro lens from Olympus. Join me. Roll titles. Well, hi YouTube, Brian James, that Micro Four Thirds guy with you once again. And in today's video I'm going to be looking at my first bit of kit, my first kit review of 2023. And it is this, it's the fantastic little Olympus 60mm f2.8 macro lens. It's a full proper macro lens, a 1:1 magnification ratio. Actually, it's more than that, but we'll come back to that in a couple of seconds. And I've been trying this today. Now, I'm totally in debt to my colleague Paul, who's loaned me his copy of this lens to do this review on today. And Paul, if you're watching, thank you very much for loaning me this. I've had a fun day today with this, real fun day. Now, I've also had a bit of a problem with this though. I'll tell you a bit of the background. I first shot a 60mm f2.8 macro Olympus lens a few years ago when I was doing a headshot shoot. So I was using it purely as a 60mm lens, nothing to do with the macro side. And I enjoyed the lens. It was pin sharp. It really was a pleasure to use. I found that there was very few vices in it, few flaws. I saw no chromatic aberration. I saw no drop off in the corners with vignetting. And it was just a pleasure to use. But I'd never used it to do macro. Now, of course, in the UK at the moment, being, what date is it? It's about the 6th of January. It's been pouring of rain for the last few days. It's been very windy, and it's been sub-zero temperatures most of the nights. So we don't have a great deal of plants and flowers and insects around. And one of the great things about using a macro lens, unless you're doing scientific work, it does tend to be used an awful lot for nature work. A lot of the time to do sort of insects and bugs and flowers and things. Well, my garden's totally devoid of flowers at the moment, and the bugs are keeping themselves very much to themselves, hidden away to keep themselves warm. So I had a bit of a problem as to what to take photographs of, and I'm indebted to Houghton Hall Garden Centre in Carlisle, who obviously have plants and flowers for sale. Not a huge amount flowering at the moment, but more than in my garden. And they were very kind and allowed me to go around their flower section and take some photographs in there to test the lens out. Now, I'm not sponsored by Houghton Hall, but I will say that if you're up in Carlisle, take up the last junction last junction in England before you get to Scotland, junction 44, turn right towards the east, and you'll find Houghton Hall about a mile down. Absolutely fabulous. They've got a great selection of plants and garden sort of things, but also they've got a lovely cafe in there, and they've got all sorts of other bits and pieces. It's well worth visiting, and as I say, thanks very much to Houghton Hall for your kindness in letting me take these photographs. However, I'll show you the photographs I took towards the end of the video. But first to the lens itself. The lens is great. It's 185 grams in weight, so it's not a particularly heavy lens, but it has substance. It's long, it's about 82mm long and about 56mm wide. So it's a long, thin lens for what it actually is. It actually is smaller, shorter than the 12-40 zoom lens. But because it is so much narrower than the 12-40, it just seems particularly long. It's not though. It does extend out if you have the lens hood. The optional lens hood doesn't come with the camera standard. And what I love about this lens hood is it's on and it's in its stored position there. Normally you'd have to take it off and turn it around. On this, pulls out and clips out forward. Magic. Absolute magic. Stays on the camera and protects the focus ring as you do it. And it just goes back flush with the lens cap there. To take it off, it's a standard bayonet mount. I am disappointed though, as usual, that Olympus, or OMDS as it is now, forgive me in my videos for keep on saying Olympus. I've had 50 years of being used to calling them Olympus. To go to OMDS is it's proving difficult for me, but you all know what I'm on about. But the problem is they just don't supply them as standard, and that little bit of plastic, it's clever, but it's nothing special. It's about £50 UK to buy. It's on top of the price of the lens. I think this is just a total rip-off Olympus when other camera manufacturers give you lens caps with the cameras equally as good as this. So, you know, the good thing is you can buy them from third-party retailers for about a quarter the price. So, you know, you can get them for about 12 to 15 pounds. So you pay your money, I suppose, but I just find this so disappointing for something which is integral to taking your lens outside, especially on bright sunny days. I'll leave that off for the moment. We'll have a look at the lens itself. First of all, the first thing that you see is this window on the top of the lens, and that has a little gauge inside which shows you your focal distance away from the subject. The other thing is, if I take it 90 degrees round, you've got a focus limiting switch, and this is great because there's 4 positions on it. The first position, which is spring loaded, takes you to 1:1, and that takes you to a macro position. It fully zooms the lens in as far as it'll go. And if you put the camera to manual and you pull that forward, you don't have your autofocus, but you can use the camera distance. You can move the camera in until you get your distance, and that's going to be focused at the minimum distance with minimum fuss. The next position takes you to focus distance between 19 centimeters and 40 centimeters. So if you're getting fairly close range, instead of it hunting through the whole lot, because it is a long range between infinity and the 19 centimeters, and it's not the fastest hunting for that because it's wanting some accuracy, take it between the 19 and 40, and that's going to really narrow it down, give you a very quick autofocus from there. The next one will take you from, if I can take it down, there we are, takes you, that's the standard position, which is 19 centimeters to infinity, and that'll do the full range. The last one on there is 40 centimeters to infinity. If I'm doing headshots, if I'm doing any sort of portrait work, that's where I'd have it, because it's not even getting it into the close range stuff, it's keeping it at a longer one, so your autofocus becomes incredibly quick and incredibly sharp and easy to use. So very useful position on that one. Standard sort of metal mount on there. The body and the lens just feels good. It feels high quality. It feels really well made. It is plastic, but it's a really high quality plastic. The focus ring, beautifully smooth, which it needs to be because there's a lot of turns between infinity and the 19 centimeters. So if you're trying to focus it in manually, it takes quite a while to do it. But it is beautifully smooth. No nasty glitches on it, no nasty high points or low points, and a lovely wide focus ring. The only thing I don't like, and it's coming across the board of the Olympus things, it's quite a hard plastic. I quite like the rubberized plastic that Lumix has, but there's plenty of grip on there, and it's not really anything to write home about on there. The focus on this one also has the MSC system, which is the movie and stills compatible system from Olympus. And what that really means is just about a silent autofocus motor. So if you're using this on video and you've got a lens, you've got a microphone on top of the camera, you just cannot hear this thing focusing in and out. It's beautiful. So again, like all the other MSC lenses in the Olympus range, it's movie stills compatible. Very good. 46mm for the filter thread, which is pretty much standard on most of the Olympus lenses and Lumix lenses for that matter as well in the normal ranges. So it's easy to put filters on and easy to put accessories onto it. And that's about it. Stick it on the front of the camera. I've been using this on my EM1 Mark II today, and I thoroughly enjoyed using it, to tell you the truth. I'll just change over the lenses because I've got my 17mm on at the moment, and I'll put this back onto my EM1 Mark II. Bear with me. I'll line the little red dots up. But as you can see, it looks quite long. It's not a silly long lens. As I say, it's no longer than the 12 to 40 zoom, but because it is so narrow, it has a sort of a snout-like appearance. But very well balanced, very easy to use. And as I say, using it as a prime lens, as a 60mm prime lens, it's not an issue whatsoever. It's very comfortable to use and well balanced on the camera. Trying it on some of my other cameras, it again is well balanced even on some of the smaller cameras that I've got, because it's not particularly heavy, so it's really good on this. Now before I go on, don't forget, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, please hit the subscribe button below, and please, I really would appreciate if you can give a big thumbs up to this video if you like it, because that really helps the video get spread by YouTube to more and more people to see, and that's very useful for the channel. Now the other thing is as well, you'll have noticed that I've got my Patreon page up and working. So if you are a patron of the channel through Patreon, thank you very much for your support. And also, if you're one of the people who buys a cup of coffee through the link below, the PayPal link, again, you're the people who are keeping this channel afloat and making it possible for me to get out there and do the videos. So thank you so much. Now, on the note of that, this video, by the time you've seen it on YouTube, the Patreon patrons will have seen it 2 weeks ago. So this is one of the benefits of being on Patreon, is that you see a lot of the videos before anybody else does. So this is a Patreon special video, which will be seen in the middle of the month by YouTube, but you'll have already seen it on Patreon. So thank you very much for your support on that. However, details are down below, by the way, just in the details section. You'll find the links for both Patreon and the PayPal. Have a look there. Anyway, back to the review. So on to the specs on this thing. Before I show you the photographs, I'll keep the photographs at the end, as I say, and I'll let you see what's been going on. I'll tell you about that. But let's have a look at the nitty-gritty of the specs on this camera. So, as I say, it's a 60mm, which is 120mm full frame equivalent lens. So it's a medium telephoto lens. It has, starting from the front, the iris on there. It's a 7-blade iris, which has got curved blades. So again, if you're going for that sort of the bokeh, the creamy background, and getting really nice creamy bokeh balls of light in the background, if that's your thing, because it's got the 7 blades and they're curved, you don't get those sort of strange little sharp edges on it. So it's really good for that. Now, it is only 2.8 f2.8. But that's equally as fast as the Pro series lenses from Olympus. You know, the 12 to 40 is an f2.8 and its minimum aperture. And to me, this is great. It doesn't cause me problems. And being a 60mm lens, if you are doing portrait work with it rather than the macro work, if you are doing portrait work with it, it sounds as if it may be not necessarily terrific to get creepy backgrounds. But remember on this that being a 60mm, it's a medium telephoto, so you're getting a certain amount of compression on that as well, and that's going to increase the creaminess. It's going to reduce the depth of field perception on there, so that you get the really nice separation from front to back. So it's very, very usable lens as a 60mm lens. Lens-wise, it's got 13 elements in 10 groups, and I'll stick the lens diagram over the front of this for all of you who like that sort of thing. So you've got the lens diagram on there. The lens itself is splash proof and dust proof when used with a compatible weatherproof camera from Olympus or Lumix, I presume. But it's splash proof and dust proof. So it's a nice lens for taking outside if you are going to be doing it. So if you are doing any macro work out in the field, it's not going to cause you any problems on that whatsoever. Field of view on this at infinity is 20 degrees because, as I say, it's a medium telephoto lens. Closest focusing distance in its macro is only 19 centimeters. Now, I keep on saying this because there's still people ask me this question about what do you mean by 19? Is it 19 from the front? It's 19 from your focal plane. Now, if you have a look on most cameras, they'll have a little mark somewhere, and it's just on the Olympus. It's just on the side there, a little circle with a line through, and that shows you where your sensor is. That's the focal plane. So it's 19 centimeters from there. So it's actually not very far in front of the lens itself. And again, when you've got the lens cap on, this can cause problems because the lens cap on the front of there, if you're getting up there, you're almost touching whatever it is with the lens cap. Now, if you're taking photographs of insects, for instance, and this is where the 60mm lens comes in really good. If you're taking photographs of insects, for instance, you don't want to be too close. You're going to spook them and they're going to fly away. If you can keep out of their space but still get a 1:1 magnification, then you're getting your macro shot. The problem with this lens cap being, the lens hood I should say, not lens cap, being on there, is you're really getting close to your subject, so it can spook insects and things. So when you're shooting macro, it's maybe worth taking that bit off. But remember, the 19 centimeters is very, very close to the front of the lens because it's from the focal plane on that. The aperture goes from a fully wide open at f2.8 down to f22, so it's a standard sort of range on Micro Four Thirds lenses for that one. As I've said previously, 185 grams, so it's not a particularly heavy camera whatsoever. But one of the things I did say was it's got a 1:1 magnification range. Now, this comes in a little bit different again as well when you're comparing it to an equivalent on a full frame. It's equivalent on a full frame to a 2:1 range. Now, why is that? Well, effectively what you're doing, we've got a cropped sensor, so we're going in. So when we see something which is 17 millimeters, for instance, in real life, a 1:1 will make it 17 millimeters on the sensor. But of course, if we had a full frame sensor, it would be twice as wide. So it would take up less of the space. So effectively, we're zooming in on that. So we have effectively a 2:1 crop compared to a full frame, because we have that 2:1 crop of the Micro Four Thirds format. So effectively, this is giving us a 2:1 macro lens, which again really is fantastic. Now, there are other macro lenses on the market for Micro Four Thirds. Lumix certainly have a 45mm and a 30mm. I don't know if the 45mm is still in production, but the 30mm is. But the problem with both of those is to get close to something for the macro, to get the same sort of magnification that you're getting, you've got to be considerably closer to the subject. This can be twice the distance away than the 30. For instance. And again, as I say, if you're photographing insects or wildlife, you're going to start getting into their territory, into their little personal space, and you're going to probably lose the shot because they'll move on, they'll fly away, or they'll scuttle away. So again, having the 60mm lens on this compared to the 30 does give more opportunities for taking those shots. So the lens itself, as I say, really good. Insofar as the performance of the lens, as I said at the beginning when I shot it as a 60mm for portraits, I found it just about viceless. It really was a magical lens to use. And again, this one on macro, from what I've been able to do today, and remember, I'm not a macro shooter, this is my little excursion into it, so I make no apologies for the fact that there are far better macro shots out on the market than what I've done today, but this was an easy way just to take photographs and test it. When I was out there taking photographs today, I can see really no vices still. There's no drop of, no vignetting, even at the fully zoomed in on the 19cm, the macro, the 1:1 setting. I can't find any drop off in the corners. There's no real distortions that I can see on this one that's appreciable. It seems to be really clean. And again, even when I've zoomed into some of these, when I've been processing some of these photographs afterwards, I just cannot see any chromatic aberration. If there is, it's so minuscule that it's not worth worrying about. So you're not getting any of the green or magenta lines on the edges. I'm really impressed by it, by the lens. It's super sharp across the board, from the center to the outsides, and to me that is just the sign of a fantastic lens, irrespective of the price. Now, speaking of price, it's not the cheapest lens. It's about £500 UK, about a similar sort of in euro or dollars. But I've seen them on MPB for around about £300 to £330. I think about £330 in excellent condition, coming with a box and all the bits and pieces. So they're not a hugely expensive lens. They're not cheap. There's nothing cheap in photography, but they're not a hugely expensive lens. And if macro photography is your thing, then it's a no-brainer. It's an essential lens for you to get, in my opinion. So let's have a look at some of the photographs in a few moments and see how I did get on with these. The other thing I did take some photographs of, just a couple of shots. I got an old hard disk which has got a printed circuit board, one of these tiny little printed circuit boards which are impossible to fix because they're so close together, and the detail on that. And I took a few photographs of that again last night just to try and see how they came out, because seeing those sometimes is difficult. And if you can use this lens for something scientific, that might be the sort of thing that you're taking photographs of. Now, before we have a look at the photographs, a couple of points. First of all, another thanks to Houghton Hall Garden Centre for allowing me to go around and take photographs today. But at this time of year in the winter in the Northern Hemisphere, there's not a great deal of light. So I wanted to try and get a little bit of extra light. So what I've used on this shoot today is a speed light in an easy speed box from Lasterlight. An easy box speed light, I should say, from Lasterlight. It's about an 8-inch square. I'll just let it on there. About an 8-inch square soft box with the strobe light on the back. And just shooting manually with a trigger on top of the camera, and that was enough to give me the light. And the problem that you have is with this is to try and get any sort of depth of field, you're going towards the smaller apertures, the f11, f16, f22 maybe, to try and get any depth of field on there. But of course, as soon as you do that, you're giving up some of the sharpness of the lens by getting away from its sweet spot. The sweet spot around about the f4 to f8. So you're getting away from that sweet spot. So you have to have a bit of a compromise. And to get enough light in, I was having to get to about f11. But the problem with shooting f11 is that you've got very, very little available light. So hence why I'm using the speed light. But the speed light also gives me another big advantage as well. When you're trying to zoom a lens in like this, and you're 19 centimeters away from something, to get it into focus, if you're hand holding it, even just a millimeter movement will totally change where the focal point is. So to try and get something pin sharp is very, very difficult. Using the speed light, I'm not limited to the speed on this, because again, the speed on this, if I was using just available light, just ambient light, the speed on it would be incredibly slow at f11, even, and to try and get a good quality shot, I'm shooting around about ISO 200 to 400 maximum, because I want to try and get as much quality in as I can. So you're really talking about a difficulty there, trying to get any sort of ability, even with 5-axis stabilization, to get a good shot. Well, by sticking your speed to 200 so it syncs to the flash, or 2/50th of a second to sync to the flash, and using the aperture to balance between the ambient light and the strobe light, if you're shooting with this, is going to give you a very, very fast response. So therefore it's freezing everything in time, so you're getting a crystal clear, super sharp image, because there's no camera blur on it. The other thing we have as well with this, of course, is we can alter the position of the lighting, and I tend to use one of these things very much just beside me, right beside me here. So I'll have the camera in one hand. So if I was taking a photograph of you, for instance, I'd have the camera there, I'd have the speed light really close, and I can alter it in the same way as if I'm taking a portrait, get a sort of 45 degrees on and 40 in front and 45 degrees looking down, and that tends to give a very, very nice light for that. The other thing is as well, although it's only 8 inches across that light box, what that means is because it is so close, in the same way as taking portraits of somebody, if you can get that softbox really close in, it becomes effectively a very big light source compared to the subject. So getting it really close into the subject, when you're shooting 19 centimeters away, your light's around about the same. It appears to be a huge, great big light, and that means you're getting very, very soft light, so the light will wrap around the subject, so you're not going to get much in the way of shadows at all on that. So even if you're shooting macro, you're going to get that. The other thing, of course, that you could do would be to put a ring light on the front, which is going to give a very, very even lighting. But then you've got something protruding out even further, and you're getting something nice and big. So if you're taking insects or something, it's going to cause you a few problems on that, because you might spook them, as I've said already. But I found that this is absolutely fantastic. You have to be able to juggle 2 hands and shoot single-handed, but once you get round that, it's fairly easy to do. So if you're going to be trying to do some of this macro and you're going to be hand holding, I would certainly suggest using something like a very, very small softbox. This is a reasonable quality one, the last light, but you can buy cheap ones on the internet for next to nothing, and they do a superb job and really work very, very well. So the other problem that I had on this, of course, as well, with it being macro, although it's an f2.8, as you get really, really close to the subject, your available light drops, and effectively becomes about an f5.6 for the available light. There's reasons for that, which I'm not going to go into on this, but it's a common problem on macro lenses. As you get really close into something, your effective aperture drops for its light capabilities. Now the camera, when it's shooting on its own metering, will take that into account. But if you're using a flash on manual, what I was having to do is give about 2 more stops of light as I was getting really close in, compared to being further away, to get the correct exposure. And again, very, very simple on these. With a manual flash gun, I can just push the button a couple of times and get myself 2 extra amounts of light by just doubling up the amount of light coming out of it, or alter the position. Very, very simple, further away or closer to it, and that gave me the ability to evenly balance it out very, very quickly. So let's have a look at those photographs and see what you think of them. As I say, there is a couple which is of the circuit board which I took, so you can see a sort of scientific one. And as I say, I'm not a macro photographer, so don't expect fantastic results. But overall, for a first attempt on this lens today, without any real sort of backup, all handheld, I think they've come out okay. Let me know in the comments what you think about the lens. Let me know what you think about the whole concept of shooting macro. Do you do it? But until the next time, after these photographs, I'll say bye-bye. Well, I hope you enjoyed those. Until the next time, keep on taking your camera out, keep on taking your photographs, and keep on having fun with your photography. See you later. Bye bye.